What's up, everybody? Just gonna go ahead and get started. One, I want to thank the Oberlin community who's come out to check us out, and I also see some, some friends, some alums, some guests. All you all glad to be here. This is just part of our Oberlin Theater Roundtable series where we just bring some artists together and we just kind of talking about how we survive and how we getting by in today's, kind of all the madness that's going on, particularly around Black Lives Matter movements, but also COVID, and then also just the daily grind and struggle of trying to be an artist and, raise yourself and raise your family. So we are very, very, very lucky to have with us today two just dynamite performers and writers and actors and just all around wonderful people. Let me do a proper introduction. Our first guest, Zora Howard, is a Harlem bred and born writer, director, performer, right? Plays include Stew, which won a 2020 Drama League Award for Outstanding Play. That's a wonderful award there.
Nominated. I'm not going to take that from whoever actually won that award. I don't want to do that.
No. That's not how that works. I want to say that doesn't the Drama Fest, like you get they don't give the award, they kind of give awards for the people who get nominated. Y'all all get the award. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's just the actors.
Today, Justin. I don't know.
Yeah, the Drama League awards they're funny things, but the Drama League, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll like just kind of create a group that they give, they kind of acknowledge that whole group of artists, But anyway, Drama League is a wonderful organization to be acknowledged by. Also, though, Zora is also the co-writer and starred in a wonderful, wonderful movie called Premature. Called Premature. I'm gonna show a little clip of it later, but right now, that you can see on Hulu. So that's another work. I've had the pleasure of working with Zora a couple times, being in the room with her, and she's one of the most exciting writers for me to work with that I've had a chance to work with and be in the room with. So it's a great pleasure and privilege to have Zora here. So let's everyone give the hands up for Zora. How you doing, Zora?
Hey y'all! Thank you for having me, Justin. I'm excited to just kick it, talk some.
Wonderful. Our next guest is, definitely no less, the wonderful Keenan Scott II is a playwright, a poet, an actor, director, producer, who comes from Queens, New York, right? His work has been produced at Howard University, National Black Theater, in New York City Fringe Festival. Keenan has a critically acclaimed play called Thoughts of a Colored Man, which was tearing up the regional theater scene all last year. It was workshopped and developed at the Arena Stage in DC, as well as the New York Theater Workshop. The play had its world premiere at Syracuse Stage, and then it transferred to Baltimore Center Stage, and it's looking like it's on its way to Broadway once Broadway turns back its lights on in 2021. Says Scott Keenan is also being commissioned for several pieces, including being a part of the Play at Home series curated by Baltimore Center Stage, Long Wharf, and the Public Theater. And it looks like, he also has a piece called The Migration LP that I had the pleasure to read, that is currently being developed at the New York Stage and Film Workshop, with his sights on a New York City premiere in 2021. I see here also that he's developing a TV series entitled The New Reform, right? Let's put our hands up for Mr. Keenan Scott. What's going on, brother? How you feeling today?
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Feeling great. Thank you for having me. I'm blessed to have the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to speaking to everybody, you and Zora, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm just glad that to just get the three of us together. It's again, both of you are just two of my favorite people, and just the energy that you bring. I've known Keenan for a little bit less longer than Zora, but the short time I've known you, just the energy that you reflect, the enthusiasm and the love, both of you all in your work. What I really like about both of you all's work is that you both really lead from a love of Black people. There's a real profound love without being afraid to be also critical of Black people, because we can be critical of each other and still love each other as well. You know, and sometimes we feel like we got to compromise one for the other. Oftentimes you read work or see films that seem like they got to compromise one for the other, but both of you all do a wonderful job of balancing that, you know. Now I'm wondering, you know, both of you all being New York heads, come running run around in the city. You got Queens and Harlem in the house. I'm wondering, one, you know, how y'all got interested in theater. You know, like what was your kind of early passions or so? How did you even develop an interest in theater?
Zora, you want to lead?
Sure. Yeah. So you know, I often try to, because the question is asked often, you know, if I started writing or performing first, and I honestly cannot remember, but I do have like some of my earliest memories are of writing. And from the very beginning, everything that I wrote, I wanted to share. It was a deeply personal practice, but it was also like, it's kind of dope. I want to tell somebody about this. So, you know, I would write something and I would run to share it with my parents. And as I got a little older, you know, my cousins would be over and we'd like, you know, put these little shows together that we perform in the kitchen, you know, like devising work at a very young age and not having a name for it. And also very young, very blessed that my parents, I grew up in Harlem. There's a school right down the block from my house called the Harlem School of the Arts. It's founded by Dorothy Maynard. It's, you know, still standing, you know, knock on wood. And my parents just kind of dropped my brother and I off there at a very young age. I think I started classes there when I was 4 years old. And they had classes in all the performing arts, visual arts, theater, dance, you know, vocal, instrument, all of that. And I was doing a little bit of everything. And the thing that really stuck, that I really landed on and couldn't get me out of these classes, were the theater classes. And at a certain point, I kind of, you know, stopped taking the violin, that didn't stick, and all that other stuff that they were trying to get me to do, and was just living in the theater, you know. And I really, once, you know, I started to have the language to put to what I feel like I've always been doing. Like, yeah, I was writing things to be performed. Now that's a playwright, you know, and I was staging little performances in my kitchen. That's a director, you know what I'm saying? So it all started, I think, that school, very formative. In
Harlem School of the Arts.
Harlem School of the Arts, yeah. And me being able to put a name to what I felt very much in my spirit, and so I already was an artist. And then continue to just pursue other institutions where I could continue to train and hone in on my craft. But it all started in Harlem, and I'm, you know, my parents.
See, I mean, because I'm speaking right now, we're speaking specifically on the theater, you know, I mean, because the theater is such a unique and kind of special love and passion, you know, especially, you know, coming up in the hood and whatnot. It's like how not, for me coming up, I was the only person who liked theater, and I don't really necessarily even know how or why, you know, but that's why I'm kind of always interested in seeing how other folks got drawn to the theater in our community when, you know, when it may not be kind of the first entree that we see in our community, you know what I'm saying? Keenan, how about you?
For me, it's a little different. I didn't grow up really knowing the art form of theater at all. My origins started with slam poetry. And so the origin of me writing and performing, like Zora just said, came at the same time. Both came, one didn't come without the other. So I started writing poetry and things of that nature around like 13. At 15, I was already performing in the underground slam poetry scene in DC. I had moved down to Maryland by that time. So I was like competing against grown folk when I was like 15 and sneaking into clubs and things of that nature, performing, you know, my pieces, which helped me, you know, hone in on my craft. And by my senior year of high school, I did a play because it was like, hey, what can I do before I graduate? You know, wanted to kind of like do everything before I graduate. And I got bit by the acting bug. So at that, I kind of changed my direction of what I wanted to do in college before I went off. And I wanted to study acting in theater because I was told that if you can act on the stage, you can act anywhere. And due to what I was already doing with poetry, I kind of wanted to segue into acting. And once I was in my program, long story short, once they put the quote unquote American the great American dramas in front of me, the ones, the canons, so to speak, in American theater, I didn't see myself represented. So
and where were you, Keenan? Where did you go to school?
I went to Frostburg State University. It's in Western Maryland, so it's like the mountains, kind of like right outside of West Virginia. So middle of nowhere, you know, up in the mountains, and I just didn't feel represented in the plays that they was putting in front of me, and I was being told that they was great. Not away from any of those writers, the Tennessee Williams and the David Mammoths and Ibsen and all of them, but I didn't see my communities represented in those pieces. I didn't see my generation. I didn't see or hear myself. So that's when I wanted to try my hand while studying acting, try my hand at writing a play. At the time, not even considering myself a playwright yet, really just a poet, an MC, and all those things. And that was the origins of me starting to really wanted to create something to where if I was to step on stage, I wouldn't have to change who I was. A lot of times institutions don't realize the institutional racism that's embedded in academia. And I wasn't taught to be my best self. I feel like a lot of training came from trying to erase or pull back my blackness, so to speak. So my origin of wanting to be a playwright was to write something to where I didn't have to change my identity if I stepped on stage. And then of course those were the early stages of my play that you mentioned. So that's how I fell into the art form of theater. So it was a little older for me. I wasn't into theater when I was a kid. I was more like, you know, in the movies and TV and all in TV shows and that, but not theater.
Yeah. Well, but you know, I feel like, you know, again, you saying the slam poetry and I feel like that is the theatrical tradition, you know. I mean, particularly coming from our community, like we're often like taught to think of theater in this very kind of narrow tradition, you know. I mean, I'm really as interested in other forms of theater, particularly like in our community, like stand-up comedy. We don't really think of like stand-up comedy as theater, but that's theater. You know what I'm saying? That's one person.
Yeah, it is.
On the stage.
It is. Yeah.
You know, and same thing with MCing. You know, with spoken word. You know, so a lot of those times again we kind of, I think, taught to see those instincts as kind of some on the periphery, you know. And I guess moving forward, you know, I'm interested as an educator and as an artist about how we think about those experiences more in the center, you know.
I think I didn't realize that, and I agree with you 100%. I didn't realize that until later on, because a lot of the things that I learned naturally doing, you know, spoken word and competing was a lot of the raw take on my studies when I started learning techniques in the method in acting. So it was very similar, and it was a great segue for me, not knowing that I didn't look at me performing live on stage as live performance in a sense of theater, because like you said, it's so carved out, especially in our communities. Theater is carved out in a way to where it seems like we're really not welcome to the table. And a lot of times, I feel like theater is focused on who are the quote unquote theater goers. And I think that art form, in a lot of ways, where it falls short is that it's created for the ticket goer. So if they feel that, you know, the Black youth is not the ticket buyer, then why create stories that would speak to that? So I didn't realize until looking back, until I, like I said, started wanting to tell my own stories, how those worlds can be connected and actually do as a people as well. So that was something I kind of saw later on when I started delving into the craft more.
And so I guess, you know, kind of a little on the same note, like, so how did you interact with you know, this kind of classic canon, you know, in theater schools or training? I know partially, you know, being in Harlem Schools of Arts and being around classical theater, Harlem, you kind of had a different experience or possibilities, you know, in terms of engaging with these European white classic texts, you know. And I'm just wondering how, you know, was it a struggle? Was it inspiring? Or how you navigated just that?
You know, it wasn't really, I just had a different initiation because, so I was at the Harlem School of the Arts, and the time that I was there as a young person, the Classical Theater of Harlem was in residence there. This is when Chris McElrin and Alfred Pricer were running the company. And
That's two white men.
Two white men, and they were up in Harlem staging these classical plays with all Black companies.
Right.
And people were coming, downtown people were coming up to Harlem to see these productions. And I mean, you know, because this was, you know, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it wasn't like what this moment in theater is right now. There weren't a lot of companies that companies that weren't already Black companies and who, you know, who didn't need to be convinced of the worth of Black talent that were doing this, that were, you know, getting the attention of the industry. And that's the first professional company that I had any experience in. I've started, you know, playing a lot of the kid roles in the Shakespeare's, and I was, you know, starting to be cast in a lot of these shows. And so my first experience of Shakespeare really was an all Black cast. Everybody was Black except for Banquo. I think Banquo was white.
So you thought that's what this play is? That's what this.
Yeah, like, he's one. And you know, Rosalind Ruff, shout out to Roz. She was my first experience of Lady M. And so because that was, and I'm a kid, like I'm like 9 years old, you know, and because that was my first experience of Lady M, I was like, oh, well, Lady M Black, you know, Big Becky's Black too. And so I didn't have to unlearn anything moving forward because that was my first experience. And with so many, and all of, because it was a classical theater company. So at that time, they were really committed to doing adaptations and reimaginings of classical plays. The company has shifted now, but so I'm seeing, like, you know, I'm seeing the Greeks, I'm seeing Shakespeare, I'm seeing it all in full color. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't.
And
really,
are you saying that it? I mean, well, did it feel like, you know, I guess that you weren't all the way welcome there? Did you have experiences where you felt like, you know, this ain't really for me? Or did you always then throughout your life always kind of feel like, oh, you know what, the Greeks, Shakespeare, that's mine. I can do whatever I want with it. Or
you mean while I was in Harlem at
I mean, I guess just coming up in general. Yeah, but did you ever hit a spot even in life, I guess, where you felt like, you know, no, this is not.
Yeah, it wasn't until
grad school.
Yeah, because at that time it was very insular. Like I was a kid from Harlem, growing up in Harlem with this Black theater company in Harlem at this art school, which wasn't, you know, Black in name, but it was a time when Harlem was mostly Black. So there was a lot of, you know, Black there. So I didn't, you know, and I didn't really go outside of that bubble. Except for like when I went to school and stuff, but this was home, you know, this was like when I'm uptown, I'm home, and this is what it is. Because that was my foundation, you know, every time it wasn't that, or I was told it couldn't be that, or that's not what it was supposed to be, I was like, I don't believe you, because I've seen it, and I've seen it work, and I've seen it be successful, and I've seen some of the most amazing talent I've ever experienced in my lifetime from a very young age in those roles, killing those roles, like not doing it how they were doing it when I was starting to get out in the world and seeing it in professional, you know, off-Broadway productions or whatever on Broadway. I was like, oh yeah, they're not doing it like, well, nobody does it like Rosalind Ruff, but you know what I'm saying? So it was a hard time I didn't need convincing, you know, and I'm very lucky in that way, that was my, you know, the way I came into the theater, because I didn't need, you couldn't tell me that, you know, I couldn't play Lady M, or I couldn't play Medea, or I couldn't play Juliet, or I couldn't play, who can I play? What? I play anybody, you know? When I got in grad school, they started casting me as everybody's maid. I don't know a maid I haven't played. I've been everybody's maid. You know what I'm saying? That was new. I was like, you know, why am I not, you know, I'm not the professors aren't coming in and necessarily being like, we're gonna have you, because in grad school, they assign the roles. You know, they weren't like, oh, you're going to be the ingenue, you're going to play the leading lady. It wasn't, I was killing those maids though. But, you know, I did feel the shift. And I was critical of it, you know. And it was cool though too, because, you know, I was there and I was critical and I was observing and I knew what it was. It wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh, I wasn't shocked about it at all. But that's fine, because on the side I was writing. these very
Mhm.
Black plays. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
actually have a play about the maids, all the maids that I played in that
Mhm.
experience. So
Hmm.
I was very lucky,
Hmm.
Yeah,
very
it's
lucky
interesting.
to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, lucky, yeah, you talented, persistent. There's other words that we could use as well, you know.
Blessed. Definitely.
Blessed. Okay, I'll take that one. I'll take that. Luck. Yeah, you know, I still plays less a part. You know. Now, I guess for both of you, you know, as Black and brown folks, oftentimes is you know the decision to pursue a career in the arts, you know, is often the you know one that is not encouraged often within our community, within our families. You know, some not. I'm just curious about that decision for you. You know, when you decided, you know what, I want to spend my life in the arts. And was it a tough decision? Was it hard to get support for? You know, was it a big leap or not?
That's a great question. I feel like deciding a life in art was easy for me because I've always been an artist since before I can remember. My first love in life was drawing and painting and things of that nature, even before I got into the storytelling and writing words. So for me, being an artist is innate to me. So I couldn't imagine really doing anything else or pursuing anything else. Of course, as we know, into adulthood, the struggle is, of course, you know, finances and livelihood and bills and all of those things that we all have to worry about. That was probably the biggest challenge. But the challenge of deciding art is what I wanted to do wasn't a difficult one. I think my family recognized that as well. Of course, you know, I had those family members that say, "Why don't you just get a real job or a regular job or you know a
Mm-hmm.
9 to 5?" And those things I had to do as well, just like the next artist to be able to survive and just be a part of that hustle. You know, I was a
Like
teacher.
what's some jobs that you had to do, you know, I guess to support the artist in you?
Over the years, my main profession once I got into it, I taught for many years, junior high students. But as far as hustles, I worked at a grocery store. You know what I mean? I swept
Mm-hmm.
floors. I was a cashier. I
Mm-hmm.
worked in a deli, a paper
Mm-hmm.
factory. I worked at H&M retail. So name it, I've probably done it for sure.
Mhm. Right, and this
I've
is
done
all
it
though to support, but because we got to find ways to support the artists in our life. You know what
100%.
I'm saying? Because you're right. I think it is. It's easier to acknowledge that. Oh, I want to make art, right? And
Right.
then, but it's tougher of like, how am I going to support the artist in me? And then how is the artist going to support the people I love? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
And yeah, and I'm fortunate, you know, now at this point in life, you know, having a family where, you know, I'm blessed to be able to, you know, my art is doing me well at this point. But yeah, growing up, you know, late teens, you know, early adulthood, getting into my 20s and things of that nature, it was a struggle and it was a nonstop hustle of, you know, not sleeping much and finding time to be able to create, but also having those gigs, whatever they may be, to be able to, you know, support myself financially.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of a role, and I got to give you a shout out. Yeah, wasn't it this year? You got married this year, didn't you, brother?
Last year, yes.
It
Yeah,
was last.
it was like,
So,
yeah,
so
time is flying.
Dang, it sure is.
Yeah,
Right. So right,
married
you
last May.
supporting the family, and you also
Uh,
have a daughter,
yes, yep,
right?
yep.
How old is your daughter?
She'll be 13 in December.
Now, is she an artist? Is she into arts at all?
She is. She goes to one of the top art schools in Manhattan. She goes to PPAS. So she does musical theater. So she sings. She loves writing, which is crazy to me. So she does it all, little dances. So yeah, she's definitely a performer.
Thank you, brother. How about you, Zora? How How about how you support the professional? So how you pay them bills, all of that. You know that decision to be a professional artist.
Yeah. So I was similar to Keenan. I had a lot of support,
Mhm.
from my family in terms of, there was never anything else I thought I was going to do. My mother was a veterinarian. So when I was very young, I wanted to do everything my mother did. And she brought me in for surgery one time and I saw that blood and I was like, well, nope, not this, not this. And yeah, all of my family has been very, very encouraging. It shows up to all the shows and, all of that. It's really made me feel like, yeah, the one thing my parents had in the house was like, make sure them grades are right.
Yeah.
Grades are right. We don't really care what you do. I mean, obviously they care to an extent. They won't, I don't know, shoot up the club, but yeah, they were certainly like, we believe in what you see for yourself, and encourage me to pursue it and take it seriously too. And in terms of how I too have had my fair share of other jobs that weren't, me creating. I think when I graduated from grad school, a lot of my peers, my colleagues were, hitting the pavement, going out on auditions, trying to get reps and all of that. And even before we graduated, we were still prepping for Showcase, and I was interviewing because I was like, I need a job, I need a job that has a salary. I need to be able to survive. You know what I'm saying? I can't wing it when I get back to the city. I don't have that kind of like net to wing it on. You know what I'm saying? I have to be able to support myself. So had a job. I worked a lot in arts administration. Even as I was creating at the same time, I was always kind of, up until really last year, it was always keeping a pretty steady 9 to 5. And just this year, this is the first year where I've been writing full time and seeing if I can figure out, but that still means hustling though. That still means hustling.
Yeah.
Means you say
so
yes.
This is your first time to say where you kind of like, you're a nonstop, you kind of a full-time artist.
Yes.
Right.
Blessings. Yeah, for me, it was last year for me to start of mine. So I'm like a year and a half in being full time myself. So it's a blessing and a long time coming for sure. So blessings to you, sister, too, because I know that feeling, boy.
Yes, indeed. Where you like, no, this is my letter of resignation. Please don't keep me in mind.
I resigned from my I was the head of the Department of Theater. I built a theater program at the middle school I was working at in Brooklyn, in Crown Heights, and I resigned last June after being there for several years, helping them. But it's a beautiful thing as an artist, especially with all of the side hustles, all of the side, the education. You mentioned you was in grad. I did just undergrad. Tried to do grad, but didn't quite work out for me. But just do all the schooling, all the side gigs, all the training, and just really just working on your craft nonstop to be able to get to the point where it's like, wow, I can be that full-time artist I always wanted to be is a beautiful thing.
Right.
It still doesn't. I'm not gonna say like it feels secure.
No, it doesn't feel secure. I don't know if it ever will. But like you said, it doesn't mean that the hustle stops. It's just the energy and where you place it is a little different. But yeah, it's definitely still a grind for sure.
Yes, indeed.
That's what it is, isn't it? This business, though, I tell young folk, it never feels all the way secure, even when it seemed like you blowing up and everything's going right, but you always feel like, oh, I gotta stay on the grind, and it's interesting to hear you say that, Zora, considering, you've had quite a year this year, right? Again, you had a play that blew up, you had a movie that blew up, and I want people to check out this film. It's a beautiful film called Premature that you can watch on Hulu. Here's just a little trailer for the piece.
Oh, wow.
Come on, technology.
Hey, Johnny, stop. You hungry?
What?
You was looking at her, right? Oh, stop there. Oh, damn it. Who that with you?
It's my cousin.
Cousin Daddy.
I make music. I came up with school, but that didn't work out, so now I'm just grinding,
Yeah. I'm going to school in the fall.
Short-lived romance, huh?
What happened? Nothing. You shining, ho? You shining like new money.
You look grown too. She said he look grown.
But hello. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, you grown.
Oh, what are you doing?
Come on, be free.
All the times we shared.
What if I stayed?
Where is this coming from?
You don't want me to stay?
You want to give everything up.
I wanted to give everything up.
Started as a fairy tale.
Your friends, they mad young.
But they're my friends.
Too bad we had no happy ending. And that the only fool was me.
You don't get it.
See, now I'm the
You think this happens all the time? You don't. This is real.
was never meant to be.
Yeah.
You better work, sister. I like that. Listen, I'm about to watch that tonight.
Thank you, Justin, put me on.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Now that's amazing. And Zora, you was if I'm correct, you was a part of Strivers Row, correct?
Yes, I was.
I was a big fan of y'all's. Big fan. I'm
What's Strivers Row for the people? What's Strivers Row?
It was well, I'm sure you can explain better than me, but a collective of some of the dopest poets that I've known or come across and witnessed and performed with some. So crazy group. If y'all don't know, please Google, YouTube. All of them are on there, I'm sure. And it's literally some of the best poets I've ever heard. But I wanted to give you some flowers in that way too, because I was a huge fan. I'm very good friends with Joshua Bennett. We've performed together a few times. But I was just a big fan. All of y'all was, I think, just a couple years younger than me. And I think when y'all started catching y'all stride, I was like transitioning out of competing and performing and all that. So I used to watch from afar and I used to love doing it. So I appreciated what y'all was doing and the movement that y'all made, which was huge.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for
Absolutely.
that. You got it right. It was just a collective of poets. You know, all of us had, to some extent, grown. I mean, I've been knowing Josh since I was 12, you know, and Carvins too, since I was a kid. We were kids. And
Carvins did a workshop with me. He did a workshop in my play.
He told me about that. I remember that.
Yeah, 3 years ago. Carvins, he's a good cat too.
Yes, indeed. Just had a baby.
Well, you know, I mean, there's so much that how much we inspire each other, you know, and I think that the importance of like the students, like you don't know, I mean, the communities that you build, whether it's at home on the block, whether it's in college, whether it's in grad school, whether it's writing groups, how important those groups are in terms of just keeping you inspired, you know, and keeping you connected, because you really up as a generation almost, you know. And I think, you know, Keenan, like you're saying, just the importance of just kind of always just trying to keep yourself active, keep yourself, you know, keep working, keep writing, keep, you know, go see shows, go to groups, go to, you know, that's really what on the grind is, you know, like finding ways to build community and stay active.
Yeah, because you never know who people are going to be. You know, Zora, I'm sure you didn't know that you would be doing what you're doing at this exact moment, as well as what Carvins has done, with Joshua, what Jasmine has done, with all of you have done, you know, everybody kind of, you know, which is beautiful to me, starting so young in the poetry world, right? And then seeing people transitioning to being professors and actors and playwrights, you know, us being a little, you know, older compared to when we was younger and starting it off. But you never know who people are going to be. And I think you should always strive to be the best in a room, but never remain the best in a room. You know, you always want to be around somebody that you can learn from, study their craft. And all of those things, you have to surround yourself around those people. So having those collectives like a Strivers Row or creating that community is special, because you don't know who y'all are quote unquote going to grow or evolve to be. And then like you and what we have to do better as a community is keep those communities strong and support each other, because that's how everyone else does it. So whatever industry you're in, usually, you know, people that are beside you, or the ones that you pull up or give that opportunity to, are the people that you know. And I think that's just natural to do that. So making sure you surround yourself with like-minded individuals that can also strengthen you and sharpen your sword is a must. It's you have to do it.
Who are some folks, like, you know, that I guess that really like change you, either your heroes that you look up to in the world, either that you've worked with that changed, you know, and either gave you a new confidence or a new look, or just maybe somebody you saw from afar, you know? I mean, who are your heroes or inspirations in the game?
It's a lot. I think I've been fortunate to work with a lot of amazing artists over the years. And I think my writing and storytelling, because since I'm an actor, I always trust the actor. So I've worked with some intelligently beautiful performers, which I've always trusted and trust them to kind of do the actor's work and character development and things of that nature. As far as growing up, as far as people from afar or heroes, as you say, I was huge on Tupac, still am, the man he was. And I think what he was inevitably going to be, I think he would have been the Malcolm X of this generation, nothing less than. Huge fan of Spike Lee and his work. I haven't worked with Spike, but I've, you know, attended some of his classes and things of that nature. Being a huge fan of the hip hop culture, definitely, of course, being, you know, the New Yorker that I am, loving Nas and his storytelling. So that was really like my origins of storytelling to me, is was hip hop artists, especially the ones from the 90s. And my family, you know, being from the South Bronx, so hearing those kind of stories of the origins of hip hop and things of that nature is a little closer to my heart. Those are probably as far as who influenced me, was definitely like artists like a Spike Lee and what he was doing in the 80s and 90s with his films, Nas and his music. Just to probably name like the first ones that come to mind, as far as like just really influential on being unapologetically Black and being myself and believing in my voice and in the community that I come from.
What about you, Zora?
Yeah, I think when it comes to growing up, at least, because I was such my way into storytelling is through reading. I was just always head in a book growing up. Actually, still, that's the place I enjoy the most is being with a book. So I was reading, and I got that from both my parents, but really from my mother. I would just pick up whatever she put down, which was sometimes, you know, problematic when I was a kid, because she was reading some mature content. But also having a background in poetry, you know, I was growing up reading Nikki Giovanni and Audre Lorde and Gwendolyn Brooks and Octavia Butler. I'm a huge speculative fiction fan. So, and this is again, like looking at my mama and just taking it out of her hand and maybe grappling with some things that I didn't fully understand and couldn't kind of like articulate back to you, but because I was absorbing it, it was in my conscious, you know, even if I couldn't fully understand it because I was young, you know, and I hadn't really I didn't yet have all of the context, you know, like Audre Lorde's words hit me different now, right. You know, in my age now, whatever it is, versus like when I was a teenager, you know what I'm saying? So, and then also just to echo Keenan, like being a performer and really that being my my first way into theater.
Yeah.
So much respect for actors and have been so lucky. I mean, I mentioned Roz earlier, but I can't say that enough. Like, I don't even know if she knows kind of what that was.
Roz Ruff, yeah, she's a fabulous actor, New York actor, yeah.
Watching her do what she did in these huge, iconic leading roles as a really little girl. Like I was 9 years old, 8 when I first started acting with the company. So I'm a little Black girl looking at this grown Black woman. without telling me directly, but she probably did too, but without actually saying it with her words, was like, you can do anything you want. You can do anything you want. You know?
Yeah, that was beautiful that you was able to see that at a young age, Black folk in theater. Because I know for me, I didn't see that until like maybe late high school, where it was like on TV special, or until my probably American modern drama class in college. So for me, I didn't, and especially even still being from Queens, and then partly, you know, growing up outside of DC as well, just not seeing theater, not going, like, I didn't go to my first show until I was in college on stage. And that's not to count like high school productions or anything like that. I'm talking about like professional actors on stage, and being from Queens and Midtown, not being but so far, but appearing like, you know,
it
worlds
seemed like a world away. Yeah.
So like, that's when people ask me, it's like, you know, especially with my origins of performing, I studied battle rappers because I was a shy kid. So I was like, what personality do I need to have on stage? And what do I have to, you know, I was studying, you know, when I started, Deaf Poetry just started, maybe, because I think I started competing in 01, 02 maybe. So Deaf Poetry was new, you know, and battle rap, you know, so, you know, so those are kind of like those are the performers I studied. And I'm happy to be able to, you know, transition that, I guess, that attitude and that bravado, and so to speak, into the acting when I was able to. So I think it was beautiful for you, Zora, to be able to see yourself so early on, because when you grow up young and you see yourself represented, there's no question of identity. And you might have still had it, you know, own personal, we all have that, but just in a sense of, like you said, speaking about Roz, that you was able to see that as a young girl, and see that wasn't even a question to you, that was possible if you chose to do that, which you have.
And that's what y'all are, you all for other people. Y'all are for the people in the Zoom room right now. I mean, just the reference that we provide for each other, you know. And I'm gonna open it up in a minute for you all, to everybody in the room, is that, you know, just I'm having so much fun talking to these two. I wonder if y'all could talk a little bit. We got some writers in the room. Like, what's your process like to get a play out? To, you know, like, how do you get that play written and done? You know, so I've had the pleasure to work with you, and I've seen you, you know, talk to you one week and you have no play. 3 weeks later, you have a whole play. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just wondering, again, how for each of you, what's your process or your ritual to see the play all the way to its end?
I wish I could say, I wish I was the writer that was like, you know, every morning at 6 a.m. I have my tea, I get into the computer, writing. That is not the situation for me. What I usually do, and I know, Justin, you can attest to this, I usually obligate myself to something real. Like, there are other people in the room. You know, I get a director involved, I get actors involved, a way of holding myself accountable. Because sometimes I'm not enough. Like, I like my plays, I like my characters stuff, but a lot of times I just don't want to write like that. So when there's like a date on the calendar, you know, last time we worked together, Justin, there was that date looking at me every day on a calendar, and like, sure enough, whatever happens with me, there's going to be 3 actors, a director, a stage manager, a producer in that room expecting a play. And, I don't like to show up looking foolish, you know. That's really just what motivates me. I know it's so different for so many writers, but because I so much, like, my plays are not even close to what they will be and can be until I get actors in the room, because they teach me so much about my plays, and a director in the room, dramaturg in the room. So I'm like hurrying up real fast to get to that point where I can be in the room, and you got to have at least some pages to be in anybody's room, I think. So there's no motivation for me like other artists.
So give a deadline. So even young artists, if you're trying to say, hey, we're gonna do a reading in 3 weeks, and tell other people to kind of give yourself a deadline and bring other people.
You don't need an organization or an institution to do that. You need a friend. You know, you might need a single person to hold you accountable. You know, if you're in school right now, and that's that too, like being in school, like you will never have time. Like you have time right now. And I know school feels like you don't have any time, but there's no time. Like I think back about how much more opportunity there was when I was in school to be creative and making and just like, you know, hitting my friends up like, yo, we got a room, we got a studio. Like I've been working on this thing, or like, let's get around a table. Like, can you, and everybody wants to do it. Obviously they're there because they want to act and stuff. So nobody's like, oh, you'll have to call my reps and I'll let you know what I'm saying? Like everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? So to capitalize on that energy, because there's just, you know, as soon as you get out, then this start to, not to say that you can't do the same exact thing when you get out, but it starts to like, you know, more steps to achieve the very same thing, which is like a text away right now.
I echo a lot of that, Zora. I think my independent experience and process is different from now being in the commercial industry sense of it. Like you said, now it's call your rep and this rep will call this person, like, you know, the kind of my people will call your people type thing, which gets to be a lot. But for me, I like to I don't have a regimented schedule, you know. Most of the time I like to work at night, but for me, I have become a stickler on organization of my thoughts. There was a time when I would write a great 10 pages, put it down for months, come back and not being able to pick it back up because not spiritually being in the same place or in the same place mentally. So for me now, I'm very big on outlines. And a lot of, I do a lot of the heavy lifting of my things early because I have so many ideas and literally so many things that I write at the same exact time in different mediums. I do a lot of the heavy lifting up front, try to figure out maybe who my characters are, try to have some type of bullet point outline of a beginning, middle, and end, just so if I start and stop, when I come back, I can jump back into my mind because I already say, okay, this is where I, you know, think this story is going to go. Of course, in development, once you get actors and everybody in the room, like Zora said, that's when a play really comes alive, or whatever you're creating. But for me, just doing a heavy lift. And so by the time I get to the dialogue, that process for me is fairly quick, because that's when I like to let the characters just start to grow and evolve and talk to each other on the page. So I do a lot of the heavy lifting up front as far as for the process. But when I transitioned into the commercial world, it blew my mind. I wasn't used to having all those resources, like a director in the room, an assistant, a dramaturg, a stage manager. To me, I was like, oh, I could just write. That's all y'all want me to do. So that was a fun experience for me, transitioning. Difficult because, as we know, more hands in the pots, and artistic directors and producers and vetted interests financially. So that becomes a lot, and it can definitely weigh on you as a creative if you let it. But for me, my process is really feeling like I don't have the luxury to relax. I'm a ball player at heart, so I'm very competitive in that nature. So I don't allow myself to really try to not have idle time, even when I'm not necessarily writing dialogue. I'm organizing. If the dialogue or something is not coming to me, I'm making sure I'm creating an outline. I'm writing a synopsis. I'm doing something. I'm detailing how I want the costumes to look, doing something just to edge me towards that final goal. So I'm doing something versus I can look back in 2 months and be like, what did I really, accomplish? So just try to, create small goals if the big goals can't be attained right then and there, and just make sure I do a lot of the heavy lifting on the front end of my writing process and what I'm writing.
Let's take a little look, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Here's a little scene, a little trailer for Thoughts of a Colored Man by Keenan Scott, right? Who created a beautiful piece that really explores kind of the complexity of Black manhood by having like different characters. Each character has a different name of morality. Like one is love, one is passion, one is depression, one is lust, and this is all in Thoughts of a Colored Man.
The king, ruler of empires and gold, conqueror and holder of God's knowledge, Or is he a slave, forced a laborer of land he didn't know and couldn't own, given a new history, void of his own tongue? Either way, our ancestors endured centuries of being property, merely holding on to a dream of us, having more than they could fathom. They wanted us to live amongst the stars.
Listen, little black boy, you are the world. Listen, little black boy, you are the world.
Yeah, beautiful. I tell you, y'all, we got some wonderful artists, some extraordinary artists with us. Anybody want to? You can either zap me a question or put a question up in the chat room, y'all, or you can raise your hand. Sorry, 1 second. I'm just trying to.
Leonard, am I saying that right? I say your name right?
Joshua.
Hello. I go by my preferred name is Joshua.
Joshua, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So I saw your comment, and I want to piggyback off that because of the conversation we just said about community and what Zora was saying. When I brought up Strivers Row, Ryan is actually a great friend of mine, and he was one of those guys that was a part of my community. So when he was actually 18 and a freshman at Howard, I gave him his first professional gig in one of my plays. So I've been working with Ryan. He's a brother of mine since he was literally 18, fresh on Howard's campus. I spent 6 to 7 years developing with a lot of different actors in their department to help me develop my pieces because they were just so trained and hungry. And Ryan was one of those, and he is now the great performer he is, and of course on the show Pose, which is one of my favorites as well. I watch every episode. So just to give you that tidbit, he's one of those people that was around me very close in the group of actors that I worked with for years and years to help me develop, my pieces. And that's why I said you never know who people are going to be, who they're going to evolve and grow to, and just keeping like-minded and just, beautiful individuals around you is very key in artistry, as you grow.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everybody. I'm Caroline Jackson Smith. I'm the chair of theater here, colleague of Justin's, and I just want to appreciate you, Zora and Keenan, for being here. I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the styles you work in. And I know I heard you say, Keenan, how much spoken word has influenced you, and I could see that just even in your style. I was watching a panel about Ntozake Shange yesterday, and a question was asked about whether or not the whole idea of choreo poem could be even like an aesthetic style that a lot of Black people gravitate to, where we're not necessarily choosing the word or the music or the dance or one or the other over each other. So I was just wondering, how do you feel like your style is evolving? Are you writing pieces that are different styles, writing for film as opposed to stage? Just whatever y'all thinking about.
Yes, I'm always, I think my first way into story often is concept and following that structure. And then I work my way down to, not to say that a character won't come to me very strongly, or like an exchange of dialogue won't like hit me in my head and I have to write it down. But the thing that usually like gets me to sit down and be like, okay, I'm gonna try to do this in front of a computer is a concept that I'm very excited about. Like, I'm like, this is a challenge. I want to see if I can make this work. Playing around with form, breaking form, all very exciting to me. And I think there's such a rich history of that when it comes to Black theater makers. That it doesn't have to be one thing, that it can be a choreo poem, and at the same time it break and there be a whole kitchen sink scene in the middle of it, and it go back or don't go there. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that, and not feeling bound to any one type of storytelling. also work in the film space as well. And you know, my first experience really working on that side of film was with Premature, and I remember during the process I was so taken aback by how many times I was told, well, that's not how film works. That's not how it's done. And me being new to film, I'm like, all right, cool. Maybe that's just not how film works. But at a certain point, and got a little more confident, you know, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, sure, that's not how film works. But I come from a creative space, the theater world, where like we make it work.
Yeah.
You know, that's the theater tradition I come from. You know, oh, you don't got a what? Well, use this, and you don't need to do it where? Well, use that, and you know, put that there, and move this over here, and hang that, and then you got a show. So, and that kind of like, let's make it happen, and that there's no one way to make it happen, and your idea might not be the best idea, even if you have, you know, top billing on a call sheet. All of that really informs how I approach screenwriting as well, and that creative process. So all of it very much based in the theater space, for sure.
Yeah, to echo what Zora said, I really love to experiment with form as well. I think what has helped me compared to a lot of other writers I have come across, I never studied storytelling or writing in academia. So I never approach it from a super structured, this is the way it has to go. It has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And the story, you know, the dots have to connect in these ways. So I really experiment and always try to challenge myself to write in different ways, in different genres, and try to fuse as many, I guess, different forms as I can. You know, whether that's, you know, some type of movement, music, poetry. I always try to experiment and see how many things I can put into, like Zora said, make it work, because that is the tradition of us. Yeah. And I read a lot of African folklore, which I always try to weave into my storytelling as well, because the African model of storytelling is more circular, not as linear as Western storytelling, even though we have our imprint on Western storytelling as well. So I try to experiment and see what rules I can break. Of course, we all know there are certain key elements in storytelling that kind of just work across the board, but I really try to worry about that on the back end when things are being developed. More people come to the table, more creatives kind of have their hands on it. But at the beginning, I really just try to write how I feel and tell a story the best way I know how, and kind of worry about the structure and execution and all of the bells and whistles and things a little later on. As far as when it comes to storytelling, at the beginning, I just try to write from a spiritual place and kind of do it the best way I can when I'm in that creative space before other people start to attach themselves, you know, like actors or directors or cinematographers or whatever media I'm working in, whether it's stage, TV.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I'm gonna give some shout out. We got some great people in the room here. We got a fantastic set designer, Richard Morris Jr. in the house. We have incredible choreographer, Brazilian choreographer, dancer, Flavia Nascimento in the house. Thank you all for being here. Our wonderful, esteemed alum, Shinnery Jackson, who's graduated and going on, done some wonderful things. Just giving some shout outs to some folks. Josh, we having a question?
I do, thank you. First of all, thank you both for being here. Keenan, I appreciate you acknowledging. Right now, I'm working with, well, also, let me address this. Caroline Jackson Smith and Justin Emeka are single-handedly the reasons that I am working within this discipline of playwriting and director and all these things. And I really I'm probably gonna be shouting y'all out for the rest of my life. Right now I'm working with sound and sort of producing not only my music, but that really got into producing other people's plays in the sense of the background vocals or background music or atmospherics for their work. And I was curious if you've had any experience with sort of constructing those things, especially looking now. Justin had a piece with in a version of Antigone, and even like hearing what he did in the background with the music. Do you have any sort of perspective on working with that and how you sort of utilize maybe even this time period working just only through screens and things like that?
Experience as far as I'm sorry, can you say the question one more time? As far as experience working with, you said like sound and music.
Yes.
Yeah, I have myself. I'm definitely create music as well. Not as much as I used to, but I'm always when I think of ideas, I'm always thinking music as well because it's so influential on my style and where I like to go with storytelling. I think music is very instrumental in that. I'm currently working with a partner right now on a musical, but I'm always thinking of some type of inspiration or something to pull from different types of, different genres, different time periods to be able to help along with my storytelling. So I definitely have some as well as, and I want to know it as well as possible. So when I do have a sound or music person on board, or I'm collaborating with, I'm as articulate as possible with my vision of kind of what I hear when I'm thinking of my stories. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. And Zora, do you have any words on that?
I usually have music referenced in my plays, in my script.
Yeah, all of them.
That being said, I am not usually the one that is creating the sound for my projects, but when I am in a production process work, that is kind of like one of the first places in terms of conversations with designers, the design team. That's one of the first conversations, because whether or not it's actually like music itself, but really sound. There's a lot of sound in my plays. And I think of I'm just thinking about Stu, how, and Justin was a part of this too, like the beginning scene of my play Stu is, there's a sequence of sounds, and these are real life like sounds that you would make with things that are in a real literal space, but like how sound is connected to memory and what sound triggers and how sound tells story, and how sound is very attached to how we carry sound is very attached to character, and like there's another play. The first thing we see is this. One of my characters on the phone, like just on the phone, and there's like a very specific gospel music reference of what she's listening to on her audible radio. Like these are, it's usually like a very specific character thing for me, sound, or at least music. And then with sound itself, I'm just interested in what the experience of like my writing on top of a landscape of sound that is not necessarily like, what is that also teaching? So if we heard like there's like a phone ring and then the what is that called? The teapot steams, and then a glass breaks, and then a dog barks, and you hear basketball, like all of this, and then how sound is therefore not only connected to character, but also connected to place, and how that it can immediately, in a way that you can't really achieve with anything else, I think, on stage, or cost a lot more money to try to achieve it with anything else, establish where we are, what time it is, who we are, than sound design. You can get a million different sounds to play, but you can't get a million different sets, I'll tell you that.
And I think it's like that form bending too, when it comes to sound and music, is where it's like if you have a piece that's contemporary, whether it's or a period piece, you can have the music to reflect that, or like we see a lot of times in TV and film, breaking that mold and playing something that's contemporary in a piece that's set in the 60s also says something too. Like if you was to sample Jay-Z and put him in a civil rights movie, clearly Jay-Z has nothing to do with that era, but if he evokes that type of emotion out of you in that moment, that can also help too in helping to kind of blur those lines at time with storytelling when done effectively.
We
got a few more.
Quick shout out to my colleagues, Jason Dorwart, who teaches theater history. here at Oberlin College, and he's also a graduate of UCSD, where Zora went to school.
Hi, Zora.
Also, my esteemed colleague, Matthew Wright, who teaches acting here, who also went to UCSD, right? So it's UCSD. And then also Professora Marielle, who is down in Salvador, I think, who is here with us, who's here. So thank you all for dropping in and supporting us. Now, D-Way had a question that they wanted to ask right quick. Can they get on in here?
Hi, thank you all so much. This has been like really amazing to hear y'all share like your processes as artists, and then to also like see what you guys are working on right now. It's really amazing. I'm like currently in a writing internship with Professor Caroline Jackson Smith, and I think that's something that she was like that I've been wondering how to navigate as a writer. It's something that Miss Caroline is excited to see me figure out on my own, but I'm gonna cheat by asking y'all how this works. And I guess my question is basically like, how do you draw the line between where you are in your story and like how your story like deals with your personal life?
Yeah.
I have the healthiest answer for you, D-Way. Where do you draw the line? That is, I think it is so personal, you know, and so specific to the artist, that there is always a line, you know, no matter how obscured it is by the art, there is always a line. I think in the best art, right, that we know, even if it's set in Mars, you know, and there's aliens and, you know, everything's made out of cotton candy, there's still something, you know, if it's truthful. I think you do have to, okay, I'll say two things. You asked the wrong person. I think you do have to take care of yourself. Yeah. You know, and I think that can be a metric for where you draw your line. You gotta put in, you know, because right, if you're telling the truth in your art making, it will pull from you, you know, and the more you pursue that truth, the more it's going to pull, and it will continue to pull. It can be relentless if you don't if you're not at the same time filling up, you know what I'm saying? And that is a very kind of, again, personal and unique part of process that I think each artist just has to find. Because some
Zora, do you find yourself, you know, like at times like feel like, okay, I'm writing of me, I'm writing of my own experience, but now I'm having a hard time removing myself in order to create the fictional world as well, you know? So I guess navigating that space of it's coming from you, but it's also just your imagination. Well, coming from your experience.
Even when it's coming from you, it's still your imagination, it's still fiction.
Right, but I mean, I guess, but some though, we write almost from our experience, right? From people that we know, and we're writing from families, and, you know, we almost then feel a certain responsibility to be truthful to them. You know what I'm saying? If we're basing a character off of our mother or off of our brother, you know, so finding that balance of basing off our real experience in our imagination.
But I would say that even when we are writing, you know, from experience, it is still a fiction, because it is our perception of, you know, that person or that experience, you know. It's also like how we see ourselves in ourselves, which is a fiction as well. You know what I'm saying? Because like, when I'm in my stories, I look good, I feel good, I'm rich, you know, all these kinds of things. I think you have the license and the liberty as an artist to take as much as you need and leave as much as you need. You know, this play I wrote, Stew, is very much based on the women in my family. So much so that after my mother saw it for the first time, she said, "Where are my royalties?" But it's also not a one-to-one, like that is not the experience of those women and of that family is not my family's experience. I'm in that play, but it's, you know, there's no single character, like that's my track. No, a lot of that is fiction, is made up, is imagination, informed by what is real and true for me. And that's the play space I find as a writer, because you're gonna know, but your audience isn't gonna know. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna hit you different in the audience, but when you're sitting in the audience experiencing it, but that can be your secret too, you know? And how you show up in your work from the development and the writing of it all the way through production, you control and you get to choose. You know what I'm saying? You can be there and not have to have a whole, you know, you don't have to share everything with everybody who's a part of your process. You can have secrets as a writer. You know, all of that is fair game. I think it's just you got to find your sweet spot with that. And that is so specific to the individual. And I'm fucked up some relationships, writing a little bit too much. Did I just say that? I'm sorry, y'all. Oh, sometimes look at my audience. Okay, cool.
You got any thoughts on that, Keenan?
I think you said that very well. I echo everything Zora just said, and I feel like, yeah, it's on you to give as much as you want or as least as you want. I find it works well for me because, you know, they tell you to write what you know, that all of my ideas, all of my plays, my stories, regardless of where it takes place, what era, what time, is a little bit of my DNA in it. Some characters have a little more than others. Like Justin said, you know, I pull from some of my best friends, you know, mothers, aunts, you know, uncles, grandparents, you know, things of that nature. So I feel like for me, I always try to put some type of DNA of myself or somebody that I know, so the story can feel as real as possible to me, regardless of how much artistic liberty I take around how much DNA I put in the story. Sometimes I give a lot, sometimes I give a little. I did struggle with one of the characters in my play that Justin showed, which at first, early on in the process, was very much so me, up and down. But as the play evolved and grew, the character really started to grow into his own person that wasn't myself. And when that happened, it was very hard for me to find a balance of the difference of the storytelling and like what was me and what was my essence. That's probably I've only struggled with one character in that way because it was one of the first full stories I wrote. But I always like to, you know, we're all multi-layered, you know, human beings. So there's always some part of myself that I place somewhere in a story, whether it's a conversation that I may have had, a conversation I heard. I always interject that in all of my stories, just so I can feel a part of myself in it in that way. So I could that's the way I spiritually like to approach my work.
Thank you. Josh, was that your hand?
Yeah, I'm really glad D-Way asked that question because, like, in my work, I don't see the line and I don't care to see the line. And I'm curious if you even have to have a line. Like because I've seen what happens when you don't have a line, and like people are automatically going to gravitate towards the reality, and maybe the line develops over time because you start to see I'm writing this and this and this and this, and then you start to see the story. But you know what I mean? Like, do you even have to have a line, or do you start with a line when you do write? And are you actually gauging how much you're giving, or are you just giving and giving and giving until you're able to develop it eventually? And then like how, you know what I mean? Yes.
I think, me personally, I think that's really on the individual. I don't think that's something that I can answer. I feel like that is on you as an individual, how comfortable you are and how transparent you want to be in your writing and your storytelling, whether a line is there or not, whether you want it to be autobiographical or not. I think that's really something in time an artist discovers for themselves and what works best for them. I don't think another artist saying, oh, I have a line, or I give this much, or I don't give this much, or it's whatever is healthy for you, I feel, as an artist, when it comes to how much you're willing to give or not give. Yeah.
Thank y'all. We kind of winding down here. I want to, thank y'all for hanging with us, everybody, and being here with us. I want to just, one kind of practical question. I'm wondering where either of you all are in terms of publication of scripts. Like, where can students, is it any in the works? Both of you all have really successful plays. I'm just wondering, how does publication work? Will we be able to buy one of these scripts soon off Amazon or something?
Hopefully one day soon. Still will be published. It's just, everything's slow. In terms of how publication works, there's a lot of different ways, I think. It really depends on the playwright. It really depends on the work. Sometimes you have a production or several productions, and it gains there's a the kind of reach of your play kind of warrants that the next step is publication, because somebody identifies, this is usually what it is, that they can make money off your script. That's usually why publication happens. But there's also, competitions, and there's programs and organizations that, if you apply with the script, part of what they will do is publish your play. I know the Yale Prize comes with publication, and several others, so if publication is super important to you, there are ways to pursue that with, don't need a production. There's ways to pursue that, where you are right now, as long as you have a full script. But yeah, soon, and very soon. But if you want to read the script, just reach out to Justin.
Yeah, I'm the same. I have no problem sharing a script or two currently where I'm at, but like Zora said, certain productions of mine being tied up commercially, I have a licensing deal on the table for Thoughts of a Colored Man, because where it's going to go, so that won't be available probably for a while in publication form. But like I said, I don't mind sharing a draft saying, hey, it's still being developed, keep it tight, because all my work is protected anyway. So I don't mind doing that because of this talk. But hopefully, like Zora said, very soon, hopefully I'm blessed enough to be able to publish and license multiple works. But right now, since most of the projects I'm working on are in development, they're not to that stage of publication yet.
I'm grateful to hear you say that it's okay if we read it, because Dewey and Joshua, Olivia Huntley, who hasn't said anything yet, there are a few writers that I'm working with. I have a class right now called Playwriting and Performance in the Time of Black Lives Matter. Joshua's in that class. And as Dewey mentioned, I have some juniors who've been writing for a while, all of whom are poets, as well as working on writing for the stage. So I'm sure that they would really get a lot out of reading your work. So I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. No problem at all.
Well, thank you, Keenan and Zora, for spending this evening with us. It's been really great hearing your voices. And yeah, just looking forward to the work that you all are going to continue to contribute on screen and on stage. And again, just to wish you all the best in your personal life as well as we move forward through these challenging times. I get a lot from you all. I hope that you all got something from us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having us. And please, reach out.
Yes, reach out. Justin, please, share the email. I have no problem. I know everybody wasn't able to speak, or sometimes people don't want to speak publicly, which is fine. Please, share my email, and I'm open to discussion and answering any other questions or helping out in whatever way I can.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming through. Brandon Brown, great to see you again, brother. Thank you for coming through.
Salam.
All right.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
So much for being here. Thanks, Justin. Hi, Richard.
Hello.
So happy you're here. Hello, Flavia. I'm so glad you're here too. What's
Thank
up?
you, Julian.
Yeah, thank you.
Professora Marielli.
I miss you guys in Oberlin.
Miss you too.
Miss you too, brother.
How's it
Stay
going?
well.
It's actually going rather well.
Good.
Stay well. That's good. He said that's right. That's good.
Yes.
That is good. Good to see you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Good night from me.
Rich.